everyone, welcome back to our channel, Hume's Little Homestead. Today I'm going to show you how I like to plant tomato plants. Tomato plants left to plant. Black Krim, green zebra. They're looking a little sad because I left them out last night and they weren't ready to be left out last night. It might be a bad idea to plant them. Amish paste. I'm not going to plant, oh, and then black cherry. I'm not going to plant the black cherry, the Amish paste, or the green zebra because they need a little recovery time. But the Black Krim is looking great. I'm going to go ahead and plant it. I should have said how to transplant an already started tomato plant. This isn't how to plant a seed of a tomato. So you get your plant, and my hands are dirty. I was planting some seeds, and I'm trying to decide where to put my last squash plants. So that's why I want to get these where they're going to go. First thing I do is I take some sharp scissors, and I trim off all the bottom stems. Okay? Don't be worried. Trim them up pretty far. I leave a couple on top because it still needs photosynthesis. And then you're going to plant it this deep in the hole. You're going to have this much sticking out. That's it. So all of this will be underground. All of this will be above ground. But plant them in as deep as you can, okay? So let's go outside and I'll show you. Here is the hole. There's a weed in the hole that we dug for this tomato plant. I put rabbit poop in there. Rabbit manure. You see it? And an egg. Now, I'm going to take it out and I'm going to place it right in the hole like that, okay? Your tomato plant will be looking like this. The last thing you want to do for your tomato plant is water it in very well. And make sure it's in the ground very good. And if you want to put a label, you can. Mine are all fading anyway, but I did put a label there. My grandma Ellen actually taught me that trick when I was in high school. I had planted some tomatoes and they were really long and spindly and just looking terrible. And she taught me to dig them up and plant them as deep as you can because the roots grow all along the stem of the tomato plant. So if you have any plants that are long and spindly, go ahead and dig them up and plant them deeper. It will be so worth it for your harvest and for your plant to be strong. It will help the plant grow a really strong stem to have a really good root system. So that is my how to plant a tomato. A few more tips I'll give you. Tomato plants like the warmth. They like it to be above 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So I like to try and wait to plant my tomatoes out until it's going to be above 45 degrees at night. They actually prefer temperatures in between, I believe it's 50 and 80. So once it starts getting above 80, it's kind of hard for them. So it's kind of a tricky plant, and especially in Arizona, we get into the 90s and 100s really soon. So it's kind of hard. But just water them, get them the water they need, and they'll be fine. When you're watering them, speaking of, they like to dry out completely in between waterings. They don't like to continue to stay wet. So if you water them and then water them one day, and then the next day let them dry out, and then the next day water them again. If it rains in your area, you might not even have to water them. They don't like wet feet. Another tip I will give for planting a transplant, and this goes for any plant, it really helps to give them 1 to 2 weeks of hardening off. And what that means is you'll take your plant out for 1 hour, and then the next day you'll take your plant out for 2 hours, and then the next day you'll take your plant out for 3 hours. And I've done that all along on this channel so far. I've showed how I hardened my plants off. And so I hope that if you need to see how to do that, just go back and find some of my videos. I think I did label some of them hardening off plants. But anyway, it really helps if you get your plants acclimated and used to the weather before they're actually put in the ground. Last tips I will give is plant in the evening so that the tomato plant has all night to be out of the sun and to get comfy in its spot. And then try not to plant on a windy day. And if it's going to be cloudy the next day, so if you say you plant in the evening, and I did this last week, I planted my other tomatoes, I planted all the tomatoes out. It was a cloudy day. No, it was the evening, and the next day was supposed to be a cloudy day, and then the next day there was supposed to be no wind. It was like a trifecta, 3 perfect days in a row. I planted in the evening, the next day was cloudy, the next day was no wind. It was perfectly still, and it was full sun. And so the plants slowly got acclimated to their new spot. And that is kind of my biggest tips, is the wind can really damage them and the sun can damage them if they have not been hardened off. Once they're hardened off, they love to be in full sun all day. They really love the sun. So try not to plant them in the shade unless you have a certain variety that likes the shade. I can't think of any that like the shade right now. They also like to hog the space from their neighbors, so I wouldn't plant them next to anything that, like, if you're planting next to squash, make sure you give the proper amount of spacing. And I talked about that a little bit of companion planting. You can plant herbs underneath your tomatoes, and you can prune the tomatoes up a little bit so that they have airflow and so that it helps resist blight. So those are my tips on tomatoes. Definitely, I will probably do some more tips about pruning and that later on. And I've just barely started pruning last year. I had never done it until last year, and last year was my best harvest yet. So I learned these tips from Jess, some of the tips I learned from my grandma, and then last year I did a lot of research watching Jess from Roots and Refuge Farm. I love her channel. Go check it out if you haven't. She is like an expert tomato grower. So yeah, that's it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for watching. Oh, if you haven't, please like and subscribe. We appreciate it.